You're about to discover something that will fundamentally alter how you perceive reality itself. And I need you to understand something crucial right now. This isn't just another self-help concept or philosophical theory. This is measurable science that's been hiding in plain sight, affecting every single moment of your existence without you even knowing it. Right now, as you're watching this video, something extraordinary is happening. Your consciousness is actively participating in the creation of your reality through a phenomenon so powerful that quantum physicists have spent decades trying to understand its implications. And here's what will shock you. Every thought you think, every moment you focus your attention, every time you observe something in your life, you're literally collapsing waves of infinite possibility into concrete experiences. This is called the observer effect, and it's not metaphysical wishful thinking. It's documented quantum mechanics that's been proven in laboratories around the world. But here's where it gets mind-blowing. This same principle that governs subatomic particles is governing your entire life experience right now. Your observation, your attention, your conscious awareness is the invisible force that's been shaping your reality all along. Most people live their entire lives completely unaware that they possess this power. They think reality is something that happens to them, something they have to endure or adapt to. They believe their circumstances are fixed, their patterns are permanent, and their future is predetermined by their past. But what I'm about to share with you will shatter that illusion completely. The observer effect reveals that you are not a passive victim of your circumstances. You are the active creator of your experience through the simple act of conscious observation. And when you truly understand how this works, when you learn to harness this principle intentionally, you can literally rewire your entire life in an instant. Here's what's fascinating. Scientists first discovered the observer effect when they were studying the behavior of electrons. They found that electrons behave completely differently when they're being observed versus when they're not. When unobserved, electrons exist as waves of pure potential, existing in all possible states simultaneously. But the moment a conscious observer looks at them, these waves of possibility instantly collapse into a single, definite particle with specific properties. Think about the implications of this for a moment. The act of observation literally determines reality at the most fundamental level of existence. Not just influences it, not just affects it, but actually determines what becomes real and what remains in the realm of possibility. Now, if this principle governs the behavior of the building blocks of all matter, what does that mean for your daily life? What does it mean for your relationships, your career, your health, your financial situation? What does it mean for every pattern you've been repeating, every limitation you've been accepting, every dream you've been postponing? It means that every single moment, through the quality and direction of your attention, you are choosing which version of reality collapses into your experience. You are literally selecting which possibilities become your lived truth and which ones remain forever unrealized. But here's where most people get stuck. They think observation means looking at something with their eyes. They think it's about visual perception or intellectual analysis. But conscious observation goes far deeper than that. It's about where you place the full power of your awareness, what you emotionally invest in, what you consistently focus on with the entirety of your being. Your attention isn't neutral. It's creative, it's magnetic, it's the most powerful force you possess, and you've been using it unconsciously your entire life. Every time you focus on what's wrong, you're observing limitation into existence. Every time you replay past failures, you're collapsing those energy patterns into your present moment. Every time you worry about future scenarios, you're actually participating in their creation. This is why some people seem to effortlessly attract success, while others struggle despite their best efforts. It's not about worthiness, luck, or external circumstances. It's about what they're consistently observing with their conscious awareness. Successful people have learned to observe possibility, opportunity, and growth. They've learned to place their attention on what they want to experience rather than what they fear might happen. Let me give you a practical example of how this works in real life. Imagine two people facing the exact same challenging situation. Person A observes this challenge through the lens of victimhood, focusing on how unfair it is, how difficult their circumstances are, How unlikely success seems. Person B observes the same situation through the lens of opportunity, focusing on what they can learn, how they can grow, what possibilities might emerge from this experience. Both people are looking at identical external circumstances, but they're observing completely different realities. Person A is collapsing a timeline of struggle, limitation, and defeat. Person B is collapsing a timeline of growth, learning, and eventual triumph. The situation itself doesn't determine the outcome. The quality of observation determines everything. This is where the real power lies. Once you understand that your observation is creative, you can begin to use it intentionally. Instead of unconsciously observing your current circumstances and perpetuating them, you can consciously observe the reality you want to experience and begin collapsing it into existence. But there's a crucial distinction we need to make here. This isn't about positive thinking or denial of current circumstances. This isn't about pretending problems don't exist or forcing yourself to feel good about situations that genuinely need your attention. The observer effect works through authentic awareness, not through mental manipulation or emotional suppression. True conscious observation requires you to see clearly what is while simultaneously holding space for what could be. It's about acknowledging your current reality without being trapped by it. It's about recognizing patterns without being defined by them. It's about witnessing your circumstances without surrendering your creative power to them. When you observe from this place of authentic awareness, something remarkable happens. You begin to notice possibilities that were invisible before. You start to see opportunities that you previously overlooked. You become aware of resources, connections, and solutions that were always there but outside your field of conscious observation. This is because reality contains infinite possibilities at every moment, but you can only experience the possibilities you're capable of observing. Your current level of awareness determines which aspects of reality are visible to you and which ones remain in your blind spots. As your observation becomes more conscious, more intentional, more aligned with your authentic desires, your available reality expands exponentially. Here's what changes everything. Most people observe their lives on autopilot. They wake up and immediately focus on their problems, their stress, their fears, their limitations. They scroll through social media and observe other people's highlight reels while focusing on their own struggles. They watch the news and observe conflict, scarcity, and chaos. They go to work and observe everything that's frustrating about their job. They come home and observe what's missing in their relationships. This unconscious observation creates a feedback loop that reinforces the very patterns they want to escape. They're literally observing their limitations into existence moment by moment, day by day, year by year. Then they wonder why their circumstances never seem to change, why they feel stuck in the same cycles, why their dreams remain just dreams. But when you become conscious of this process, when you realize that your observation is your creative power, everything shifts. You begin to observe intentionally. You start to notice what's working in your life, rather than only seeing what's broken. You focus on evidence of your growth, rather than proof of your limitations. You observe possibilities rather than obstacles. This shift in observation creates an entirely different feedback loop. Instead of reinforcing limitation, you begin reinforcing expansion. Instead of collapsing timelines of struggle, you begin collapsing timelines of success. Instead of creating more of what you don't want, you begin creating more of what you do want. The beautiful thing about the observer effect is that it works instantly. The moment you shift your observation, you begin collapsing a different reality. There's no waiting period, no gradual process, no complex techniques to master. The instant you observe differently, you begin experiencing differently. This is why some people can have sudden, dramatic life changes that seem to come out of nowhere. It's not that their external circumstances suddenly shifted for no reason. It's that they had a moment of conscious observation that collapsed an entirely different possibility into their experience. They saw something they had never seen before, and that new observation instantly began reshaping their reality. You've probably experienced this yourself without realizing what was happening. Think about a time when you had a sudden insight, a moment of clarity, or a shift in perspective that changed everything. In that moment, you weren't just learning something new. You were observing a new reality into existence. You were collapsing a different set of possibilities through the power of your conscious awareness. These breakthrough moments aren't rare accidents or lucky coincidences. They're glimpses of your natural creative power in action. They're examples of what becomes possible when you observe consciously rather than unconsciously. And they're available to you in every single moment of your existence. The question is, what are you going to choose to observe next? Because your next observation is your next creative act. Your next moment of conscious awareness is your next opportunity to collapse a different reality into existence. Your next choice about where to place your attention is your next chance to rewire your entire life experience. Here's something that will completely transform how you approach this power. The observer effect doesn't just work when you're sitting in meditation or having profound spiritual moments. It's operating every single second of your waking consciousness, even in the most mundane situations. When you're stuck in traffic, you're observing. When you're having a conversation with your partner, you're observing. When you're looking at your bank account, you're observing. And each of these micro-observations is either reinforcing your current reality or helping to collapse a new one. Most people think change requires massive action, dramatic shifts, or life-altering events. But the observer effect reveals something far more subtle and powerful. Reality shifts through micro-observations accumulated over time. Every moment you choose to observe abundance rather than lack. Every instance you focus on connection rather than separation. Every second you witness possibility rather than limitation. You're laying down quantum tracks that lead to an entirely different destination. But there's a hidden trap that catches almost everyone who discovers this principle. They try to force their observations. They attempt to manufacture positive focus while their authentic awareness is still locked onto their problems. They think they can trick reality by putting on a mental performance of optimism while their deeper consciousness remains fixated on fear. This creates what quantum physicists call interference patterns. When your conscious mind is observing one thing, but your subconscious awareness is observing something completely different. These conflicting observations create static in your creative field. Instead of collapsing clear possibilities, you end up with mixed results, partial manifestations, or situations that feel almost right but not quite aligned. Authentic observation requires integration. Your surface thoughts, your emotional state, your body awareness, and your deepest knowing all need to be observing in the same direction. This isn't about perfection or never having negative thoughts. It's about developing the skill to recognize when your observation is fragmented and learning to bring all aspects of your awareness into coherent alignment. Think of your consciousness like an orchestra. When every instrument plays in harmony, the music is beautiful and powerful. But when different sections are playing different songs, you get chaos instead of creation. The observer effect works most powerfully when all levels of your awareness are observing the same reality into existence. Here's where it gets fascinating from a practical standpoint. Your body is constantly giving you feedback about what you're unconsciously observing. That tension in your shoulders, that knot in your stomach, that racing heart, that chronic fatigue. These aren't just random physical symptoms. They're biofeedback indicators showing you exactly what reality you're in the process of collapsing. When you observe through fear, your nervous system responds accordingly. Your body prepares for danger, your muscles contract, your breathing becomes shallow, your digestion slows down. You're literally embodying the reality of threat and scarcity. And your nervous system doesn't distinguish between real danger and imagined danger. It responds to your observation, not to your circumstances. Conversely, when you observe through love, appreciation, curiosity, or excitement, your entire physiology shifts. Your muscles relax, your breathing deepens, your heart rate becomes coherent, your immune system strengthens. You're embodying the reality of safety, abundance, and possibility. Your body becomes a living antenna for the experiences that match these states. This body awareness connection is crucial because most people try to change their reality from the neck up. They think observation is purely a mental process. But true conscious observation involves your entire being. It's felt in your cells, expressed through your posture, communicated through your energy field. When someone walks into a room and you immediately sense their confidence or their anxiety without them saying a word, you're picking up on their embodied observation. You're sensing what reality they're consistently collapsing through the quality of their presence. Their being is broadcasting the frequency of their habitual awareness. This is why certain people seem to naturally attract opportunities while others repel them without understanding why. It's not about their words or their actions, although those matter. It's about the reality they're embodying through their consistent observation patterns. People, opportunities, and resources are naturally drawn to those who observe and embody the frequencies they represent. Now, here's something most people never consider. Your past observations have created neural pathways that make certain observations feel automatic and natural, while others feel foreign and difficult. If you've spent years observing lack, struggle, or limitation, those neural highways are well established. Observing abundance, ease, or possibility might initially feel like you're hiking through uncharted territory. This is where most people give up. They try conscious observation for a few days or weeks, and when it doesn't feel natural or produce immediate dramatic results, they conclude it doesn't work. But you're not just changing your thoughts. You're rewiring decades of unconscious observation patterns. You're creating new neural pathways while allowing old ones to weaken from lack of use. Neuroscience shows us that it takes consistent repetition to establish new neural networks. But here's what's encouraging. Every time you choose conscious observation over unconscious reaction, you're strengthening the pathways that support your desired reality. Every moment you catch yourself observing limitation and gently redirect to possibility, you're literally reshaping your brain's architecture. The beautiful thing about neuroplasticity is that your brain wants to be efficient. Once new observation patterns become established, they begin to feel as natural as the old ones. What initially required conscious effort eventually becomes your new automatic way of perceiving and creating reality. But there's an accelerant to this process that most people overlook completely. Emotion. When you observe something with genuine emotional engagement, you create much stronger neural pathways than when you observe with detached mental effort. This is why traumatic events create such lasting imprints. They're observed with intense emotional engagement. You can use this same principle to accelerate positive change. When you observe your desired reality with authentic excitement, gratitude, or love, you create powerful neural pathways that support those observations. The key word here is authentic. Manufactured emotions don't create the same neural impact as genuine feelings. This is why successful people often talk about falling in love with their vision, becoming obsessed with their goals, or feeling genuine excitement about their future. They're not just thinking about what they want, they're observing it with the full engagement of their emotional being. This creates massive neural momentum toward their desired reality. Here's something that will shift your entire approach to personal transformation. Most people focus on changing their circumstances and hope their inner state will follow. They think, when I get the job, then I'll feel confident. When I meet the right person, then I'll feel loved. When I have enough money, then I'll feel secure. But the observer effect works in the opposite direction. Your inner state of observation creates your outer circumstances, not the other way around. When you learn to observe confidence, you begin attracting situations that confirm and reinforce your confident identity. When you observe yourself as lovable, you naturally attract loving relationships. When you observe security and abundance, opportunities for financial growth become visible. This reversal of cause and effect is perhaps the most challenging aspect of the observer effect for people to accept. We've been conditioned to believe that circumstances determine experience. But quantum mechanics reveals that observation determines experience, and circumstances are simply the reflection of our consistent observation patterns. This doesn't mean external circumstances are irrelevant. or that you should ignore practical realities. It means that your response to circumstances, your observation of them, is where your true creative power lies. Two people can face identical challenges and create completely different outcomes based solely on how they observe and respond to those situations. Understanding this principle transforms how you approach every aspect of your life. Instead of waiting for conditions to improve, you begin improving your observation of current conditions. Instead of hoping circumstances will change, you start changing your relationship with circumstances. Instead of seeking external validation, you begin validating your own worth through conscious self-observation. This shift from circumstance-dependent happiness to observation-dependent experience is perhaps the most liberating realization a human being can have. It means you're never truly stuck, never truly powerless, never truly without options. In every moment, regardless of your circumstances, you have the power to observe differently and begin collapsing a new reality. But with this power comes responsibility. Once you understand that your observation is creative, you can no longer unconsciously blame external forces for your experience. You begin to see how your habitual observation patterns have contributed to creating your current reality. This can initially be uncomfortable, especially if you've been identifying as a victim of circumstances. However, this responsibility is also your freedom. If your observation has the power to create experiences you don't want, it also has the power to create experiences you do want. The same creative force that has been working unconsciously can now work consciously in your favor. The observer effect isn't just a fascinating quantum phenomenon. It's your birthright as a conscious being. It's the mechanism through which you participate in the ongoing creation of reality. And once you learn to wield this power intentionally, consciously, and authentically, there are no limits to what you can collapse into your experience. The most profound shift happens when you realize that your current reality is not the result of external forces acting upon you, but rather the accumulated result of millions of unconscious observations you've made throughout your life. Every pattern you're experiencing, every relationship dynamic you're stuck in, every financial situation you find yourself in, every health challenge you're facing, all of it can be traced back to consistent observation patterns that have been running in the background of your consciousness. This might sound overwhelming at first, but it's actually the most empowering truth you could discover. Because if your unconscious observations created your current reality, then your conscious observations can create an entirely different one. The same creative mechanism that produced experiences you don't want can produce experiences you do want once you learn to direct it intentionally. Here's what most people don't understand about this process. Your brain doesn't distinguish between what you observe in your external environment and what you observe in your internal imagination. Neurologically, vividly imagined experiences create the same neural pathways as lived experiences. This is why athletes who visualize their performance often improve just as much as those who physically practice. When you consciously observe a desired reality through your imagination, your brain begins laying down the neural infrastructure to support that reality. You're literally rewiring your consciousness to recognize and attract the experiences that match your inner observations. This isn't wishful thinking. This is applied neuroscience. But there's a specific way to engage your imagination that multiplies the observer effect exponentially. Most people, when they try to visualize or imagine their desired reality, they observe it from the outside looking in. They see themselves having the experience rather than being in the experience. This creates a subtle separation between the observer and the observed, which weakens the creative impact. The most powerful observation happens when you step inside your desired reality and observe from within it. Instead of watching yourself succeed, you observe through the eyes of your successful self. Instead of seeing yourself in love, you observe through the consciousness of someone who is deeply loved. Instead of visualizing financial abundance, you observe through the awareness of someone who naturally attracts resources. This shift from external observation to internal embodiment collapses the distance between your current self and your desired self. You're no longer observing a future possibility. You're observing a present reality from an expanded perspective. Your consciousness begins to inhabit the very reality you want to experience, making it increasingly natural and inevitable. There's a quantum principle at work here that explains why this internal observation is so powerful. In quantum mechanics, the observer and the observed are not separate entities. They're part of the same quantum system. When you try to observe your desired reality from the outside, you maintain the illusion of separation. But when you observe from within, you recognize yourself as part of the reality you're creating. This recognition triggers what physicists call quantum entanglement between your current consciousness and your desired experience. Once entangled, changes in one immediately affect the other. As you consistently observe from within your desired reality, that reality begins to influence your current experience in ways that feel miraculous but are actually the natural result of quantum principles. The key to mastering this internal observation is learning to feel the emotions that would naturally arise if your desired reality were already true. How would you feel if you were already living your dream life? What emotions would flow through you if your goals were already accomplished? What would your inner state be if your problems were already resolved? These aren't forced positive emotions or manufactured feelings. They're the authentic emotional signatures of the reality you want to experience. By observing these emotions as already present rather than future possibilities, you begin to embody the very frequency of your desired experience. Your emotional state is actually the most direct way to influence what you observe into existence. Emotions are not just internal experiences. They're electromagnetic frequencies that interact directly with the quantum field around you. When you consistently embody the emotions of your desired reality, you create a magnetic field that naturally attracts experiences matching those frequencies. This is why gratitude is such a powerful creator of positive experiences. When you feel genuinely grateful, you're observing abundance that already exists rather than focusing on scarcity. That observation of abundance creates more experiences to feel grateful for, establishing a positive feedback loop that compounds over time. But here's something crucial that most people miss. The emotions must be authentic, not performed. Your quantum field responds to your genuine emotional state, not to emotions you think you should feel. If you're trying to force gratitude while you actually feel frustrated, you're creating conflicting observations that cancel each other out. This is where self-honesty becomes essential. You need to acknowledge what you're actually observing emotionally, not what you think you should be observing. If you're feeling anxious about money, trying to override that with forced abundance affirmations won't work. Instead, you need to gently shift your observation from the anxiety to the security that exists alongside it. There's always more than one reality available in any moment. Even when you're experiencing financial stress, there are aspects of security and abundance present in your life. Even when you're feeling lonely, there are elements of love and connection available to your awareness. The skill is learning to find and focus on these alternative observations without denying your authentic current experience. Think of your consciousness like a radio that can tune into different stations. All the stations exist simultaneously. You're simply choosing which frequency to amplify through your attention. When you're tuned into the worry station, you hear worry programming all day long. When you tune into the possibility station, you receive possibility programming instead. The beautiful thing about this radio metaphor is that you don't have to fight the worry station or try to make it disappear. You simply tune to a different frequency. The worry station continues to exist, but it's no longer dominating your awareness. Your observation has shifted to a different channel of reality. This is particularly important when dealing with challenging situations that require practical attention. The observer effect doesn't mean you ignore problems or pretend difficulties don't exist. Instead, you observe challenges through the lens of someone who naturally finds solutions rather than someone who gets overwhelmed by obstacles. When you observe a problem through the consciousness of a natural problem solver, you literally begin to notice solutions that were invisible when you observed through the consciousness of a victim. The problem remains the same, but your observational relationship to it transforms completely, opening up new possibilities for resolution. Here's where the observer effect becomes profoundly practical. Every interaction you have, every conversation you engage in, every situation you encounter is an opportunity to practice conscious observation. You can observe your coworkers through the lens of appreciation or the lens of frustration. You can observe your family through the lens of love or the lens of judgment. You can observe your daily tasks through the lens of purpose or the lens of burden. Each of these observational choices creates a completely different experience of the exact same circumstances. The people don't change, the tasks don't change, but your reality changes dramatically based on the quality of your observation. Over time, these micro-observations accumulate into macro transformations that reshape your entire life experience. The most successful people have learned to observe ordinary situations through extraordinary lenses. They see opportunities where others see obstacles. They find lessons where others find failures. They discover connections where others experience separation. They're not living in a different world. They're observing the same world through consciousness that recognizes different possibilities. This skill of conscious observation can be developed systematically. It's not a talent you either have or don't have. It's a capacity that strengthens with practice. Every time you catch yourself in unconscious observation and gently redirect to conscious observation, you're building your observational muscles. The first step is becoming aware of your current observation patterns. Most people have never paid attention to what they consistently focus on throughout the day. They've never noticed the internal commentary running in their minds or the emotional filters through which they interpret experiences. Start by simply observing your observations. Notice what thoughts capture your attention repeatedly. Pay attention to the emotional tone of your inner dialogue. Become curious about the assumptions you make about people and situations. This isn't about judging your current patterns. It's about developing awareness of the creative force you've been using unconsciously. Once you become conscious of your habitual observation patterns, you can begin experimenting with alternatives. When you catch yourself observing through the lens of limitation, gently ask yourself, how else could I observe this situation? What would someone who naturally attracts solutions focus on here? What possibilities exist that I'm not seeing? This questioning doesn't require immediate answers. Often, the simple act of asking opens your awareness to observations that weren't previously available. Your consciousness begins scanning for evidence to support different perspectives, and that evidence starts becoming visible in your experience. The transformation happens gradually at first, then accelerates as new observation patterns become established. You begin to notice that situations that used to stress you now feel manageable. People who used to trigger you now seem less threatening. Opportunities that were previously invisible now appear regularly in your awareness. This isn't because your external world has magically improved. It's because your observational capacity has expanded to recognize aspects of reality that were always present but outside your previous field of awareness. You're literally seeing more of what's actually there rather than creating something that didn't exist. But here's what makes this process truly remarkable. As your observation patterns shift, you begin to attract different experiences entirely. People respond to you differently because you're observing them differently. Opportunities appear because you're observing through the consciousness of someone who recognizes opportunities. Resources flow more easily because you're observing through the awareness of someone who expects support. The observer effect reveals that you're not separate from the reality you're experiencing. You're intimately connected to it through the quality of your observation. As your observation transforms, your reality transforms in response. This isn't magic or wishful thinking. It's the natural result of understanding and applying quantum principles to daily life. You're about to discover how this transformation accelerates when you understand the specific mechanics of quantum collapse and how your nervous system participates in this creative process. Because there's a hidden layer to the observer effect that explains why some observations create instant results, while others seem to produce no change at all. The difference between observations that create instant transformation and those that seem to fade into nothing lies in what quantum physicists call coherence amplitude. Your nervous system acts as the bridge between your conscious observation and quantum collapse. But most people have never learned to create the coherence necessary for immediate reality shifts. Here's what's happening beneath the surface of your awareness. Every observation you make generates an electromagnetic signature through your heart and brain. These aren't just metaphorical energy fields, they're measurable frequencies that extend several feet beyond your physical body. When your observation is coherent, meaning your thoughts, emotions, and bodily sensations are all aligned in the same direction, you create what scientists call a high-amplitude wave that can instantly collapse quantum possibilities into physical experience. But when your observation is fragmented, when your mind wants one thing, your emotions feel something else, and your body is tense with resistance, you create what's known as destructive interference. These conflicting signals cancel each other out, preventing any clear reality from collapsing into your experience. This is why people can visualize and affirm for years without seeing meaningful change. Your nervous system is constantly reading your internal coherence levels and broadcasting that information to the quantum field around you. When you're in a state of high coherence, your nervous system sends clear, consistent signals that the field responds to immediately. When you're in a state of fragmentation, your nervous system sends mixed signals that create static in your creative field. Think of your nervous system as a radio transmitter. When all the components are properly tuned and working together, you get a clear, powerful signal that reaches far distances. But when the components are out of sync or working against each other, you get interference that weakens or distorts the transmission entirely. This is why certain moments in your life have produced immediate, dramatic changes, while others have resulted in gradual shifts or no apparent change at all. The moments of instant transformation occurred when your entire being was coherently observing the same reality. Your thoughts, emotions, physical sensations, and deepest knowing were all aligned, creating a coherence amplitude powerful enough to instantly collapse a new timeline into existence. Most people experience this coherent observation accidentally during peak moments. Falling in love, achieving a major breakthrough, experiencing profound insight, or facing life-threatening situations. In these moments, all internal fragmentation dissolves, and they observe with their entire being unified in a single direction. The results feel miraculous because they're accessing the full power of conscious observation without the usual interference patterns. But you don't have to wait for accidental peak experiences to access this coherent observation. You can learn to create coherence intentionally by understanding how your different systems, mental, emotional, physical, and energetic, can work together rather than against each other. Your brain waves provide the first key to understanding this process. When you're stressed, anxious, or fragmented, your brain operates primarily in beta waves, rapid, chaotic frequencies that create internal noise. But when you're calm, focused, and coherent, your brain naturally shifts into alpha and theta frequencies, slower, more synchronized waves that enhance your capacity for conscious observation. These slower brainwave states don't just feel more peaceful, they actually increase your brain's sensitivity to quantum information. In alpha and theta states, your consciousness becomes more receptive to subtle possibilities that aren't visible in the noise of beta wave thinking. You begin to perceive solutions, opportunities, and insights that exist beyond the reach of ordinary analytical thinking. Your heart rhythm provides another crucial component of coherent observation. Research from the HeartMath Institute has revealed that your heart generates an electromagnetic field 60 times stronger than your brain's field. When your heart rhythm becomes coherent, characterized by smooth, sine wave-like patterns rather than chaotic, erratic beats, this powerful field begins to synchronize your entire nervous system. Heart coherence creates what scientists call psychophysiological coherence, where your heart, brain, and nervous system all begin operating in harmonious alignment. In this state, your capacity for conscious observation increases dramatically because all your biological systems are working together to support clear perception rather than creating internal interference. You can influence your heart coherence through specific breathing patterns and emotional states. When you breathe slowly and deeply while focusing on feelings of appreciation, compassion, or love, your heart rhythm naturally shifts into coherent patterns. This coherent heart rhythm then influences your brain waves, creating the optimal internal environment for powerful observation. But there's a deeper layer to this coherence that most people never discover. Your cellular structure itself participates in the observation process. Every cell in your body contains quantum microtubules that can exist in superposition states until conscious observation collapses them into specific configurations. When your entire being is coherent, these cellular quantum systems all collapse in harmony, creating massive amplification of your observational power. This cellular coherence explains why some people seem to naturally attract extraordinary experiences, while others struggle to create even small changes. Those who consistently experience synchronicities, opportunities, and positive outcomes have learned to maintain coherence at the cellular level. Their entire biological system is unified in support of their conscious intentions. The key to developing this cellular coherence lies in understanding that your body stores memories, emotions, and belief patterns in your tissues. Every experience you've had, every emotion you've felt, every belief you've adopted has left an energetic imprint in your cellular structure. These cellular memories either support or interfere with your current observations. When you try to observe abundance while your cells hold memories of scarcity, you create internal conflict that prevents coherent observation. When you attempt to observe confidence while your tissues store patterns of self-doubt, your cellular system works against your conscious intentions. This is why positive thinking alone rarely produces lasting change. It's addressing only the mental level while ignoring the cellular level where most interference patterns are stored. True transformation requires what researchers call cellular reprogramming, the process of updating the information stored in your tissues to support your conscious observations rather than sabotage them. This happens through sustained coherent observation over time, where your consistent new patterns gradually overwrite the old cellular programming. But there's an accelerated approach that can dramatically speed up this cellular transformation. When you combine conscious observation with specific physical practices that create coherence throughout your entire system, you can literally reprogram cellular memories in real time. Movement, breathwork, and sound can all create coherent vibrations that penetrate deeply into your cellular structure. When you observe your desired reality while simultaneously creating physical coherence through these practices, you're addressing transformation at every level of your being simultaneously. Your voice carries particular power in this process because sound waves can directly influence cellular structure. When you speak your observations aloud with genuine emotion and physical coherence, you're creating vibrational patterns that reprogram cellular memories while simultaneously broadcasting your intentions to the quantum field around you. This is why mantras, affirmations, and spoken intentions can be so powerful when used correctly. But they must be delivered with genuine emotional engagement and physical coherence to penetrate beyond the mental level into the cellular programming where real transformation occurs. The quantum field responds most powerfully to observations that are embodied rather than just conceptualized. When your entire being, mental, emotional, physical, and cellular, is coherently observing the same reality, you create what physicists call a standing wave pattern that can maintain its structure over time rather than collapsing immediately. Standing wave observations don't just create momentary experiences. They establish new baseline realities that become your natural state. Instead of having to work to maintain positive experiences, these experiences begin to maintain themselves because they're supported by coherent patterns at every level of your being. This is the difference between temporary peak experiences and permanent transformation. Peak experiences occur when you accidentally achieve momentary coherence, creating brief glimpses of expanded possibility. Permanent transformation occurs when you learn to maintain coherent observation consistently, establishing new standing wave patterns that become your normal reality. The most profound realization is that this coherent observation doesn't require perfect conditions or ideal circumstances. You can create coherence in the middle of chaos, maintain clear observation during challenging situations, and access quantum creative power regardless of what's happening around you. In fact, some of the most powerful transformations occur when you learn to maintain coherent observation in the face of apparent contradictions. When your external circumstances seem to contradict your desired reality, but you maintain coherent internal observation anyway, you create such a powerful quantum tension that reality has no choice but to reorganize itself to match your observation. This is where true mastery of the observer effect emerges. You're no longer dependent on favorable conditions to access your creative power. You become the stable center around which reality reorganizes itself, regardless of temporary appearances or challenging circumstances. Your coherent observation becomes the fixed point that determines how everything else in your experience aligns. People, opportunities, resources, and synchronicities all begin to flow toward the reality you're consistently observing with your entire being. But this level of mastery requires understanding one final principle that most people never discover: the relationship between observation and identity. Your deepest identity beliefs determine what observations feel natural and authentic versus what observations feel forced or artificial. If you identify as someone who struggles, observing ease and flow will feel inauthentic to your system. If you identify as someone who lacks resources, observing abundance will create internal resistance. If you identify as someone who is unlucky, observing positive synchronicities will feel foreign to your nervous system. True transformation requires what psychologists call identity shifting, the process of updating your core sense of self to align with the reality you want to observe. When your identity naturally supports your desired observations, maintaining coherent focus becomes effortless rather than requiring constant willpower. This identity shift happens through the same coherent observation process, but directed inward toward your sense of self rather than outward toward your circumstances. You begin observing yourself as the type of person who naturally experiences what you desire, and this internal observation gradually becomes your lived reality. The beautiful paradox is that as you consistently observe yourself as already being the person who lives your desired reality, you naturally begin to act, think, feel, and choose from that identity. Your behaviors align spontaneously with your observations, creating external changes that confirm and reinforce your new sense of self. This creates what researchers call an upward spiral of transformation, where each coherent observation strengthens your new identity, which makes the next coherent observation easier and more natural, which further reinforces the identity shift, and so on. The observer effect reveals that you are not fixed in your current identity or circumstances. You are a fluid, creative consciousness with the power to observe new versions of yourself into existence, moment by moment. Every coherent observation is an opportunity to collapse a more expanded, empowered, and authentic version of who you are. The question that will determine your entire future is this: what version of yourself will you choose to observe into existence with your next coherent thought, feeling, and action? Because that observation is already beginning to reshape your reality in ways you're only beginning to understand. The most advanced practitioners of conscious observation have discovered something that changes everything about how quickly transformation can occur. They've learned to work with what quantum physicists call temporal observation, the ability to observe across different timelines simultaneously. This isn't science fiction or mystical fantasy. This is cutting-edge quantum mechanics applied to consciousness. Here's what's happening that most people never realize. Your consciousness isn't limited to observing only your current moment reality. You have the capacity to observe probable futures, alternative timelines, and parallel versions of yourself that exist in the quantum field of infinite possibility. When you learn to observe these alternate realities with the same coherence and clarity that you observe your current circumstances, you begin to collapse them into your present experience. Think about this carefully. Right now, there exists a timeline where you've already overcome every challenge you're currently facing. There's a version of reality where your relationships are thriving, your career is fulfilling, your health is vibrant, and your dreams have manifested into physical form. These aren't imaginary possibilities. They're actual quantum realities existing in parallel to your current experience. The reason most people never access these alternate timelines is that they're exclusively observing their current circumstances. They look at what is and assume that's all that's possible. But quantum mechanics reveals that what is represents only a tiny fraction of what's available in any given moment. Your current reality is simply the timeline that your past observations have collapsed into existence. But every moment offers you the opportunity to begin observing a different timeline into manifestation. The key lies in understanding how to observe these alternate realities with such coherence and consistency that they begin to supersede your current timeline. This process requires what I call quantum observation bridging. Instead of trying to leap from your current reality to your desired reality all at once, you learn to observe the bridging timelines that connect where you are to where you want to be. These intermediate realities feel more authentic to your nervous system, allowing you to maintain coherence while gradually shifting toward your ultimate desired timeline. For example, if you're currently experiencing financial struggle but want to observe abundance, there are bridge timelines where you're learning to manage money wisely, developing new skills, meeting helpful connections, or discovering unexpected opportunities. These intermediate realities feel more believable to your system than sudden wealth, allowing you to maintain coherent observation without triggering internal resistance. As you consistently observe these bridge realities with genuine engagement, they begin to manifest as actual experiences in your life. You start to notice that you are indeed developing better money management skills. You are meeting people who offer valuable, visible before. These aren't coincidences. They're the advice. Opportunities are appearing that were a natural result of coherent temporal observation. But here's where this gets exponentially more powerful. As you successfully collapse these bridge timelines into your experience, your nervous system develops confidence in your ability to observe alternate realities into existence. This confidence dramatically increases your coherence amplitude, making it easier to observe more advanced timelines. What initially required tremendous focus and effort becomes increasingly natural and effortless. Your consciousness develops what researchers call quantum fluidity, the ability to move between different timeline observations with the same ease that you currently move between different thoughts. This quantum fluidity explains how some people seem to experience rapid, dramatic life transformations that appear impossible to outside observers. They haven't violated any laws of physics or received special divine intervention. They've simply learned to observe alternate timelines with such coherence that those realities collapse into their experience faster than most people thought possible. Your emotional state plays a crucial role in this temporal observation process. Different emotions literally attune you to different timeline frequencies. When you're operating from fear, anxiety, or limitation, you can only observe timelines that match those frequencies. But when you're operating from love, excitement, or possibility, you gain access to timeline frequencies that contain experiences matching those states. This is why emotional mastery becomes essential for advanced reality creation. It's not about feeling good all the time or suppressing negative emotions. It's about developing the ability to consciously choose your emotional state based on which timeline frequencies you want to access. Fear-based emotions aren't inherently bad. They simply limit your observational range to survival-oriented timelines. But expansion-based emotions open your awareness to timelines containing growth, creativity, connection, and abundance. By learning to consciously shift your emotional state, you're literally changing which realities are available for you to observe into existence. The most sophisticated approach involves what quantum researchers call emotional coherence mapping. You identify the specific emotional signatures of the timelines you want to experience, then practice embodying those emotional states independently of your current circumstances. Instead of waiting to feel abundant when you have more money, you learn to genuinely feel the emotional signature of abundance right now. Instead of waiting to feel loved when you meet the right person, you embody the feeling of being deeply loved in this moment. Instead of waiting to feel confident when you achieve success, you access the emotional frequency of confidence immediately. This isn't emotional manipulation or pretending to feel something you don't. It's recognizing that the emotions associated with your desired timelines already exist within your capacity right now. You're not creating new emotions. You're accessing emotional frequencies that are part of your natural range, but have been dormant due to your current timeline focus. When you consistently embody the emotional signatures of your desired timelines, something remarkable happens. Your nervous system begins to interpret these emotions as evidence that those realities are your current experience. This creates what neuroscientists call prospective memory activation, where your brain starts organizing your perceptions and behaviors around the timeline that matches your emotional state. You begin to notice opportunities, resources, and synchronicities that align with your embodied emotional frequency. People respond to you differently because you're broadcasting the energy signature of someone living in your desired timeline. Circumstances reorganize themselves around your shifted emotional presence. But there's a deeper layer to this process that involves your relationship with time itself. Most people experience time as linear, past, present, future, in sequential order. But consciousness operates outside of linear time. Your awareness can access information from probable futures, integrate wisdom from alternate pasts, and create from the eternal present moment simultaneously. When you learn to observe from this expanded temporal perspective, you realize that your desired reality isn't something that will happen in the future. It's something that already exists in a parallel now. You're not trying to create something new. You're trying to align with something that's already complete in another dimension of time. This recognition completely transforms your relationship with manifestation. Instead of the effortful energy of trying to make something happen, you access the natural energy of allowing something that already is to become visible in your current timeline. The struggle dissolves because you're no longer swimming against the current of time. You're flowing with the quantum currents that connect all possible realities. Your physical body plays a fascinating role in this temporal observation process. Research in quantum biology has revealed that your cells contain quantum structures called microtubules that can exist in superposition states across multiple timelines simultaneously. When you achieve deep coherence, these cellular quantum systems can access information from alternate versions of yourself. This is why people sometimes experience sudden downloads of knowledge, skills, or insights that seem to come from nowhere. They're actually accessing information from timeline versions of themselves who have already developed those capacities. Your quantum cellular structure is downloading experiences from your alternate selves and integrating them into your current reality. You can consciously work with this cellular quantum communication by creating coherent states while focusing on specific timelines where you possess the qualities or abilities you want to develop. Your microtubules begin to entangle with the quantum information from those alternate versions, gradually integrating their patterns into your current cellular structure. This explains why some people can develop new skills or overcome limiting patterns with surprising speed. They're not building these capacities from scratch. They're downloading them from timeline versions of themselves where these qualities are already developed. The practice becomes almost ridiculously simple once you understand the mechanism. You create coherence in your system through breath, emotion, and intention. Then you observe yourself as already being the version who possesses what you desire. Your cellular quantum systems do the rest, gradually integrating the patterns from that timeline into your current experience. But here's what makes this process absolutely revolutionary. As you continue working with temporal observation, you begin to realize that all possible versions of yourself exist simultaneously in what physicists call the quantum multiverse. The version of you reading these words right now is just one facet of your total consciousness experiencing itself through this particular timeline. This recognition leads to what advanced practitioners call identity integration, the process of consciously connecting with and embodying the wisdom, strength, and capabilities of your multiversal self. Instead of identifying with just this one timeline version, you begin to identify with the totality of who you are across all possible realities. From this expanded identity, creating change in your current timeline becomes as natural as moving your hand. You're not trying to become someone else. You're allowing more of who you already are to express itself through this particular dimensional focus. The implications of this understanding extend far beyond personal transformation. When you realize that consciousness can observe across multiple timelines simultaneously, you begin to see how collective human consciousness is constantly choosing which global realities to collapse into existence through our shared observations. The news you watch, the conversations you engage in, the social media you consume, all of these represent collective observations that are actively shaping which timeline humanity as a whole experiences. By becoming conscious of your individual observation choices, you're contributing to the collective shift toward more positive global timelines. This is why your personal transformation work isn't just personal. Every moment you choose to observe love over fear, possibility over limitation, connection over separation, you're casting a vote for which collective timeline becomes our shared reality. Your individual coherence contributes to the morphic field that makes these higher timeline frequencies more accessible to everyone. But the most profound realization comes when you understand that the ultimate purpose of mastering temporal observation isn't just to improve your personal circumstances. It's to remember that you are consciousness itself, temporarily focused through this particular timeline experience for the purpose of expansion, creativity, and love. From this perspective, your current challenges aren't obstacles to overcome. They're opportunities for consciousness to know itself more fully through your unique vantage point. Your desires aren't selfish wants to fulfill. They're consciousness calling itself toward greater expression through your individual focus. The observer effect reveals the fundamental truth that has been hidden in plain sight throughout human history. You are not a separate being trying to manipulate reality from the outside. You are reality itself, temporarily experiencing limitation for the joy of remembering your unlimited nature. When this recognition moves from intellectual understanding to cellular knowing, the observer effect becomes not just a technique for creating change, but a pathway for remembering who you truly are beyond all timelines, all identities, all temporary experiences. And from that remembrance, observing your desired reality into existence becomes as natural as breathing, because you finally understand that you're not trying to get something from the universe. You're allowing the universe to experience itself more fully through your conscious observations. The question that remains is simple but profound. Now that you know you have this power, now that you understand how consciousness creates reality through observation, what timeline will you choose to collapse into existence with your very next coherent thought, feeling, and action? Because in the quantum field of infinite possibility, your answer to that question has already begun reshaping everything you call your life. The observer effect isn't waiting for you to master it perfectly. It's responding to your awareness of it right now, in this very moment, as you choose what to observe next. You now possess knowledge that less than 1% of humanity will ever discover. The observer effect isn't theory anymore. It's your lived reality. Every moment from this point forward, you'll feel the weight of your creative power. You'll recognize when you're unconsciously observing limitation into existence. You'll catch yourself creating the very patterns you want to escape. But more importantly, you'll remember that you are not separate from the quantum field you're observing. You are the field, temporarily experiencing itself through your individual awareness. This isn't just about changing your circumstances. This is about remembering who you truly are beyond all timelines and identities. Your next observation is already collapsing a new reality into existence. Choose consciously.